healthcare consultants. Welcome to the Network Podcast Live. And for those of you who are new to the Network Podcast, we are a resource for aspiring and experienced healthcare consultants. And we're here to share some amazing industry experts with you and resources. And today I have with me business consultant Tiffany Washington. Hey, Tiffany, how are you doing today?
Hey, Elle, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the show. For those of you who are tuning in, Tiffany is an amazing business consultant. She's been able to acquire contracts with some amazing companies. I'm going to let her share a little bit more about herself, but today we're going to be talking everything proposals. And Tiffany, I had a lot of people tuned in and messaging me that they were so excited to listen and tune in. So
Yay.
get your book out, healthcare consultants. So Tiffany, please share a little bit more about what you do and who you are and the amazing ways you serve your own business clients.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me here. And hello to everyone in the virtual world. Thank you all so much for tuning in. My name is Tiffany A. Washington, and I help professionals and women who are seeking to add an additional six figures to their bottom line to land corporate contracts. That's what I've been doing for the past 6 years or so. I am a former school principal who ditched her day job to start speaking. So that's where my journey kind of started. And after I wrote my book that accompanied my speaking engagements, people started asking me more and more, Tiffany, how are you getting on these stages? And that's what sparked the fire within me to start sharing more about how to land contracts that are sustainable, that are reliable, and that help you to start to build the lifestyle that you desire. So that's a little bit about my background.
Absolutely. And I think now is a really great time to have these conversations. I think over the past 2 years, we're in this place where we hear a lot of news about people leaving their full time jobs. They're looking for other options. They're burned out. They're tired. And that can't be even more true as a healthcare professional. And so, one of the great ways in which we like to serve our audience is to let them know we know that you are tired, possibly as a healthcare leader, clinician, but there's options. So I'm so happy to have this conversation because who couldn't benefit from an additional six figures worth of contracts in their pockets? Like,
Amen.
right. So I'm curious to know, even before we get started, who are some of the companies that you have acquired contracts with? Because I do know in your profile, I read you acquired contracts with Rolls Royce. With Humana, but there are some other ones as well. So tell me a little bit about some of the companies that you've acquired these corporate contracts with.
Yeah, so one of my favorite ones to talk about is with the City of Houston, Department of Education, actually. And so that particular contract started out at a 35K contract, and I negotiated it up to 75K. And that particular contract was kind of like my inaugural experience into the world of contracting. And since then, I've gone on to secure contracts with the likes of Frost Bank, which is a local bank that it's here in the South. So depending on where you're from, you may or may not have heard of that particular bank. Also, I did a collaboration with one of my really good friends, and we did the hiring for the Essence Festival in 2019, I believe. Yeah, 2019. And we just got contacted again so that we could do that over again. So that means that the expertise that I had from hiring as a school principal has been transferred over into that realm. And we hire more than 400 people to serve inside of the New Orleans Fest, if you will.
Wow.
And yeah, so those are a few that come to the top of my mind right now, but I actually consult in real life. I'm an education consultant, so I parlayed my experience as a school educator into the consulting world, and I consistently land contracts inside of the education world as well.
Yes. You touched on something that I want to just highlight to the audience because Tiffany does have a background in the education space. As she mentioned, she's transitioned into the world of corporate consulting. And I just want to kind of hone in on that as we have this conversation with Tiffany today. Just remember that corporate organizations, no matter what industry, even though we're healthcare specific, however, they all need support when it comes to certain topics. So, like, let's say, for example, Tiffany, like wellness is a big thing right now. Communication is big in healthcare and outside of healthcare. Um, I mean, the list goes on, but there's so many ways, even with all of your healthcare experience and knowledge, that you can also continue to serve other industries with your experience as well. So the options and the opportunities are completely limitless.
Yes, absolutely. As you mentioned, Elle, so many different areas. DEI is hot right now. I hear that all the time. As you said,
Mhm.
wellness is definitely something people are paying more attention to. So for all of the nurses who are in the house, there are so many ways to capitalize inside of the world of wellness. So
Yes, yes, in
yeah.
huge ways. But let's dive into this topic. I know we have Brenda here. Thank you, Brenda, for joining us. Thank you, Candia, for joining us. We appreciate your presence. But let's dive into this conversation about proposals because, you know, I'm going to share some of my experiences, but I most importantly want to hear some of yours as well.
Of
But we're going to
course.
take it all the way back to the beginning because we have a lot of new or aspiring healthcare consultants. So let's kind of just start at ground zero. What
Yeah.
is the proposal?
So, a proposal is basically the way in which you say, this is what I have to offer to a company. So, based on your level of experience and expertise and the way you package your offering, that's what a proposal essentially is. It is the next step after you have a conversation with your ideal client. So, there is generally a process that you would go through in order to get to the stage of a proposal because they actually need to ask for one, and there needs to have been some conversation around that. And what you do is you outline everything that you may have discussed previously based on their pain points. And that goes into a multi page document that helps them to see what the full plan is of how you would execute based on the pain points you're solving.
Mhm. You mentioned something, and I think we got to lean into this also. The client or the prospective client asks you for the proposal. Um,
Yes.
there was a time where I was doing some outreach, Tiffany, and without having a conversation, this particular leader was like, "Just send me a proposal." I was
Hmm.
like, I don't think that's possible. We have to have a conversation first.
Yes.
So I love how you just kind of honed in on you are just reintroducing the same conversation you had. So I like that you are also familiar with that process. Can you kind of walk us through like what needs to happen before we actually draft and write a proposal? Like, what are some
Yeah.
things that happen beforehand?
Absolutely. So, first, there's a little bit of market research that you probably have done on the companies that best fit within the caliber of your experience, if you will. So, I like to call it a hit list, HIT, and that stands for high intensity touch list, the people that I really would like to reach out to that are in alignment with the problems that I'm able to solve. And after I start going through that hit list and reaching out to the decision makers, the next thing I do is try to get a meeting with them. I start a relationship, I start having conversations with them. I don't immediately ask them what it is that I want. I obviously want to make sure that I truly understand that what I have is something that they would actually need. And Ella, actually like one of the things that you and I have been talking about offline, which was throwing out an idea and asking them what they think about it, you know? And one of the additional pieces that I like to do is share. So it's more than transactional. I want it to be an opportunity for us to have a conversation back and forth. And then eventually I will get around to asking them for an opportunity to speak with them. And once I ask them for an opportunity to speak, that means setting up a call. And that means also positioning myself based on the expertise that I do have and knowing what some of the high level pain points are for that particular industry. So, for example, inside of leadership, there may be some toxic workplaces that exist, and you may have some insider knowledge into what's going on in this particular industry or company. And you start to mention that. And once you mention that and say how you have helped other organizations and companies in that particular realm, then what you can do is ask for that meeting. So usually this is done via email. Sometimes it's done in the inbox, but I like to do it in via email, just so there's a paper trail there, and give them an opportunity to either sign on with my link to have a meeting with me, or to tell me what a good time is for them to have a conversation. From there, it's either going to be a Zoom call or it's going to be in person. It just depends on where the client is located and how they like to operate, essentially. Because some people don't always want to go out for a coffee or don't want to have lunch. They just give me what it is. Let's just have this conversation.
Or the
So
leaders
yeah.
that we're having conversations with are too busy.
Yes, absolutely. That is totally
So
correct.
going to coffee or to lunch may not be an option. So
Right. Yeah. And I think I hear that a lot with people who are inexperienced in pitching. So that, just fair warning, that's not always appetizing to people who are busy and who have a lot of decisions to make throughout the day, especially if they don't know you. It's almost like going on a first date. So I don't, that's kind of weird. So in some cases, if you don't have a relationship built. So after I get on that call, after they've accepted the opportunity for us to talk with one another, that's when I really start digging deep into the questions that I'm going to ask them that are the prelude to my actual proposal.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I know we're not here to go deep into a discovery call, but I do understand that that discovery call is going to be extremely important to gathering all the data you need for your proposal.
Yeah.
So that's something that you should all, be thinking about. What key questions do you need to know? And you hit on pain points, Tiffany.
Yeah.
So even during that call, you really need to have conversations about the pain. So let's say we've had our discovery call, Tiffany.
Mm-hmm.
We've gathered all the data. We've done our research, okay?
Yep.
On the organization, on that leader. We talked about the pain points. Now it's time to write the proposal. I've never written one before. What the heck do I do?
Oh my goodness. So yes, where do I start? What
Where do I
pieces need
start?
to be in place? Let's talk about it. And if you haven't already taken out your pens and your journals, then now's the time to do so, because I'm about to give you the straight segments of your proposal. Now,
I'm
we
taking notes.
won't have enough time to go deep. However, I'm going to tell you exactly what you need from A to Z in order to have a profitable proposal. So the first thing that needs to happen is the obvious, your cover page. There's not a whole lot on this cover page. It just gives the information of your company and the company to whom you are for whom you are writing the proposal. And you may have some other founding information on there, some if you do numbers or things like that for tracking purposes. After the cover page, then you're going to have your client letter. So your client letter is more so just a high level recap of your initial meeting, and you're going to start to introduce objections there. So inside of this particular letter, you're really going to start to create the connection, remind them why you're here for this proposal. And then you move into the hook. Now, the hook is exactly what it sounds like when you go fishing. It is where you reel them in with your big promise and you start to slay objections along the way. So, even though you are positioning yourself as the expert, you also want to remind them of why they're reading this proposal in the first place. And the best way to do that is through the messaging in your hook. So, after you write the hook, the next piece is going to be priming the pain. And I like to call this priming the pain because now you're agitating it a little bit more and you are starting to set yourself up for the solution that you have for them based on the conversation that you had during the discovery call. And after you prime that pain, you're going to produce the plan. So what does that mean? That means, what can the client expect? And that is the manifestation of the solution. So as you move along this journey with me through my company, these are some of the areas where you can expect to see my work blossom inside of your particular organization. So that's where you start producing the plan. And then when you produce the plan, that may come in phases, right? So that may be phase 1, phase 2, all of that. And then you're going to present the price, because guess what? We're here to get paid. So when you present the price, you're going to be pricing by line item, possibly. It just depends on how you decide to set this segment of your proposal up. But you're going to walk through each segment of the plan and how much that might cost. Now there are variations of this, but this is one of the variations that I find works really well for my particular industry.
Mhm.
After that, you're going to pilot the plane. So, what is piloting the plane? That means that you're going to show up as the trusted guide and you're going to give them some social proof. That social proof looks like some physical images that you might have, either of you in action, depending on your industry, or graphics that can really add to the storyline of your proposal. And finally, you are going to stick the landing. So, what does that mean? That means you are going to provide a call to action, because the proposal doesn't end with you just saying everything that you can do for them based on the conversation you had. It ends with them signing the agreement and sealing the deal with a payment. So, now, the payment piece can work in different ways, because we all know net 30, net 60, net 90, depending on some of the organizations with whom you work. But for some organizations, they will pay their deposit up front, and you're off to the races there. And after you do that, then it's time for you to show off your skills. And those are the essential elements of a proposal. Did that answer your question, Elle?
Wow, you exceeded. Exceeded. I appreciate all that you share, because there are some things even within my own proposal that I hadn't included, like the cover page. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I have been using a software tool to where it just sends out, introduce yourself, your expertise, the pain, all of those things. So this was extremely informative. So you talked a little bit about objections. Are you introducing objections in your proposal that came up on the discovery call? Or is this research that you've kind of done or based off of previous knowledge also? Because I know that even during the discovery call, we have to kind of combat some of the objections. So how do you pull that information?
Yeah, so the information is pulled from one, what I did in my own personal research, but also listening during that discovery call for some of the things that they may not say. I also include those things there. So I have a duality when it comes to pulling out the particular objections. And I make sure that I include them, but I also include something that combats the objection. You can't just throw an objection in there and then not address it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And something else I just thought about, Tiffany, that this comes up often too. You know, I know in one of the phases, and I'm so happy that I also took notes, ladies and gentlemen, if you're here and you're not taking notes, please pull out your notebooks.
Yeah.
But one of the areas in which you talked about just kind of breaking down all the many elements of writing your proposal for a corporate client, you mentioned the price. Got to
Mhm.
present the price. Now, when you're presenting the price to a corporate client, um, are they seeing your price the first time in the proposal, or is this something that you should have already previously had a conversation about?
Yeah, so I think that I'll say it depends. Most of the times I will probably give some type of figure, because you pretty much know where your services generally start. And one of the things that I teach my particular clients is that if you have several packages already outlined, you know a starting price in your head. That doesn't mean that you're going to give them a general package, but you need to know for yourself what your capability is inside of your company and all of the things that you're able to offer. And based on those offerings, you might have a low tier, a mid tier, and a high tier offering, for example. I know at my highest tier, it may be a $50,000 or $100,000 price point. So if that's the case, I know based on what that conversation yields that, oh, they're looking more mid-level and these are some of the areas. And so I may mention that. I say we may be looking at a starting price of around $50,000. However, there is a range. So I do like to prepare them sometimes. It also depends on how you're feeling inside of that conversation, because I don't want people to think that they have to be robots in this conversation either. And so sometimes it is about really saying, you know what, I think I really need to create something that has some variety for you, because it may be outside of what I typically offer. However, I'm also an expert in this area, or I can pull some people in. And if I'm pulling some people in, for example, a subcontractor who may be able to help with whatever that need is, the price might vary a little bit. So sometimes it may be dangerous. You may be shooting yourself in the foot by quoting a price up front, but you can definitely give a range.
Yeah, yeah. I like what Candia mentioned here, Tiffany. She said listening can definitely secure and save the deal. I like how you provide options and a range. We definitely think alike and present alike in that aspect. And then I normally, Tiffany, I try to give them a range also on that discovery call, just so I can kind of feel them out.
Mhm.
And that's been helpful. And even if I secure a low end offer, at least I know I'm building that rapport. It gets my foot in the door. And then I have the ability to take a $15,000 contract and turn that into a multiple six-figure contract just by building the relationship and just kind of being flexible. Sometimes,
Absolutely.
especially when you're new in the business, I know, let's see, Marie here asked a really good question about how do you break into the industry. But when you're new and you're attempting to get some case studies under your belt, build that rapport, take that contract, but then you got to flip it in the long run into something even larger than what you may have initially intended it to be. So
Yeah, absolutely. And Marie, I would also add beta testing is definitely something that you should consider. If you've never been inside of the industry pitching for corporate contracts, then one of the things you might want to do is reach out to your network to see who is more immediately available for you to start performing some of those services, so that you can get the testimonials necessary for you to tout when it's time for you to approach your first major contract as
mhm.
well.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. That's great information. Something I implement as well.
Mhm.
I want to get back to the elements of the proposal because there's questions that are boiling up.
Okay.
And something that we are both um, very knowledgeable of is creating urgency, right? Like,
Yes.
I've sent you this proposal, but I don't need you to sit on it for the next few weeks or
Mhm,
months. There
mhm.
was a time, Tiffany, where my sales cycles were 6 months, 1 year, even longer than that. And a lot of times that's okay. When your sales cycles are a little bit longer because leaders are very busy. However, when it comes to putting some urgency behind this proposal, is there a deadline or a cutoff to where if you don't put this deposit down, you have 1 week for the deposit. After that, the price goes up. Today's price is
Is not tomorrow's price, right? Yesterday's price is not today's price. No, I totally am with you on that, L, because the thing is, executives are busy people. So one of the things that you must do is follow up. If you give them a time frame in which to respond to the proposal, if they miss that date, or if they're edging close to that date, then it's time for you to chime in or check in with them. And because you've built relationships with them, you may have had a back and forth conversation even after the proposal has been submitted. But I think one of the best things to do is, yes, definitely put a timeline on it. But if it's somebody that you really want to work with, you may give a little leniency. You have to know what your boundaries are within that piece, but at the same time, you're running a business. So I would definitely follow up within a week of the proposal, even if I give them 2 weeks to get the proposal signed, for example. Follow up within a week, make sure that they don't have any questions, make sure that everything is on track. I also try to get a pulse or gauge on how many hands it has to sweep through, or who's seen it, who's not. And usually I try to have those people on the call with me as well, if at all possible, if there are other decision makers who also need to be brought into the fold. And by the time 2 to 3 weeks pass up, if I still haven't heard from them, I'll do one more check in and then I'll keep moving. But I think the most important piece, L, is that this one client or potential client shouldn't be your end all be all. What should be happening is you should be continuously making relationships. This is not the only call that you're having, and you're not hanging your hat on this one opportunity. You keep going, you keep filling your pipeline, you keep building the relationships.
Mhm. So that's great advice, Tiffany. So have you created a template to where you no longer have to go in? Because I feel like, for your consultant, it's daunting to think about, okay, I got to put this proposal together, and now I have to go over all the elements of a cover page, a client letter. Got to get my hook. I got to prime the pain. I got to do some detailed research. Um, you know, can we get to a point where this is easier for us to implement?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I did, especially not just pitching for corporate, but also landing contracts for sponsorships, even, I have a template that I use. That template, it may change based on the company, but there are certain things that are consistently going to stay the same. And so what I did was I had a designer to give me a beautiful template based on our conversations back and forth, and then I went into Photoshop, actually. I'm not a Photoshop expert. However, I have a very close friend of mine who is a photographer who knows how to use Photoshop. And so I had him to teach me, like, what are the basics? How do I go in here and I retype? How do I go in here and move some things around if I need to? Just the very minimal. And I'm able to use that template and go in and change as necessary based on an actual professional designer. So yeah, I do have a template.
Okay, so our proposal should be branded.
Yes.
And are you sending like a digital file, or are you sending a virtual, like, I know there's software tools where like it makes this super easy for you to do. We'll get into that. But
Mhm.
are you creating this like in a digital space?
Yeah, so usually it ends up being a PDF in most cases, because a lot of my clients, they just want a PDF email to them, especially in the education consulting world. Just send it to me via email. That's what they want, right? And because of that, it's digital to that degree. It's
Okay.
digital to the degree of a PDF. But of course, as you mentioned, whenever you're ready to hop into that, we'll definitely talk about some other options for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Tiffany, you shared some great information as far as all the elements that we need for our proposal, things
Mhm.
that we absolutely need to have in place to wow our prospective clients so they can see the pain. I always lean into pain, by the way.
Mhm. Lean into that pain. Make them
Yes,
hurt.
yes. And then also offer some tangible solutions. And I love how you mentioned offer some options. So
Yeah.
if they're not quite ready for that high tier ticket offer, maybe we can get them somewhere in the middle or even a low ticket offer. And as I mentioned previously, just translate that into a larger contract later. I
Mhm.
want to have a conversation about maybe some proposal that you've seen and you're like, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work. So let's dive into a conversation about some proposal don'ts. What are maybe two
Mhm.
or three things that we want to avoid as we are drafting, writing, and sending this proposal out to corporate clients we desire to work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the don'ts that I would likely start with is oversharing. So, some of us are guilty of using way too many words. We're too verbose. We want to give them every single detail. And sometimes details are to your detriment. Sometimes they could be to your delight, but oftentimes we say more than what we need to. And I would also lean that into don't overpromise. I want you to deliver what you can execute with excellence. Don't throw in the baby and the kitchen sink and the bath water, all of the sayings, right? Make sure that you keep it as concise as possible and make sure that is well within your wheelhouse or within the your community circle who you built up as a team. And then I would also say that you shouldn't undervalue your services either. So that means that negotiation is expected. So even if you throw out a number, they may come back to you with a different number, or they may say, well, can we trade out this for this? Or I got with the team and we started thinking more along these lines, right? So negotiation is going to be expected when you are talking money with corporations. So that's a conversation you definitely need to be prepared for. So even if you have your different ranges in mind, still anticipate that and know what your bottom line is. What can you not do this for? If they come in and they lowball you for whatever reason, you have to know what your cutoff is for you to be profitable.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are amazing tips. And for anyone who's taking notes, if you missed that, So some things that we would need to avoid, and I'm taking notes, you all also. Thank you, Tiffany. So we don't want
Absolutely.
to overshare, overpromise, or undervalue our own services and solutions. You know something that I do? Listen, I go high.
Mhm.
I go high. So I know that if I go high with the offer, and it's like, well, that's not feasible, or it's not in the budget, then I always know I can go down. But if
Yeah.
if you're starting at $5,000 and you about to be doing facilitation, training, implementation work, you just shot yourself in the foot. So,
Absolutely. I think the main thing people need to understand is, yeah, we're asking for money that we may never have asked for before, especially if you're new to writing proposals. However, what I want you to remember is that you have to have a number for what your lifestyle needs to look like, what you need to live on, what is nice to have, and what is, man, I'm rocking and rolling. You at least need to have those figures in your mind by contract. And how many contracts do you need to attain in order to receive that? So, but and honestly speaking, even if you're doing a sponsorship, for example, and this is just the thought that comes to my head because of the work that I do. Whenever I'm doing live events and I try to get sponsorships, if you come to them asking them for $2,500, they will likely not even pay attention. So it is also very important that you know what a legitimate number looks like for your particular industry in order for people to take you seriously. So if you go in severely undervaluing yourself so that you can get your first deal or your next deal, sometimes you can still be overlooked because people know that they are paying for quality when they're paying these larger sums. And you lowballing yourself on purpose or even by accident because you didn't do the research means that you may get passed over, unfortunately.
that's so true. And I've seen
Yeah.
that happen before. And
Hmm.
sometimes, even in the corporate world, we really have to think about how we buy as well. Because at the end of the day, behind that organization, there's a human being. There's a human
Hmm.
being that makes buying decisions. So just thinking about your own buying decisions. I know I want to invest in quality. And so for that reason, there are certain places where I don't shop. And so I would think that any leader making a buying decision for their organization would take on some of the same qualities and characteristics as they would make their own buying decisions. So I love how you bring that up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, one thing that I love and enjoy doing at this phase in my business, Tiffany, is I like to work smarter, not harder. If there is
Amen.
a tool, a Zapier process that I can implement in my business to automate a workflow, I just find that that makes business more feasible for me. So now that we know about all the elements to include in our proposal, we know things not to do. We are pricing ourselves at high dollar rates in which we come with a lot of value. So we are worth that. Now I want
Absolutely.
to talk about some software tools. Let's get into some tools.
Yeah, let's get into some tools.
Mm,
So, there are three different tools that I would likely recommend based on what I see being used most frequently in the industry. Now, my personal favorite and what I use on nearly a daily basis is Adobe DC. Now, Adobe DC is specifically for documents. So, signing, combining, editing, you can do a lot of different things inside of Adobe DC, and you can purchase that along with the rest of the Adobe suite for a pretty nominal fee.
okay.
So Adobe DC is one way to do it, but another way is DocuSign, which you all have probably used DocuSign, just didn't realize it anytime you've had to sign off on any type of agreement. So that's another software that you all could possibly tap into. And then there's HelloSign. And I believe HelloSign is through Dropbox. I believe it's the owner of that particular software. But those are three different softwares that I see pretty frequently in heavy rotation as far as usage is concerned. But Elle, I'm sure you probably have some that we haven't heard about because Elle is she is a guru when it comes to technology. So lay it on me, Elle. What you got?
Listen, get your notebooks, get your pens. So I've gone through a transition in business to where sometimes we have to look at some of the tools that we're using because they may not be as effective or efficient for us. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yes, I do utilize HelloSign. That's good for me. But initially, when I started, I used FreshBooks. So
Mm-hmm.
FreshBooks really helps you with accounting, but then they introduced an integration to where you could send out proposals. So essentially, you could send your proposal out, and then you could also send out for that client to get that or place a payment for the deposit at the same time. So they
Mm-hmm.
read it, they either agreed to it or not, and then they made that deposit. So for me, for years that worked, Tiffany. But then your girl got hooked up on Honeybooks.
Oh, I've heard of Honeybooks. I've been hearing great things about Honeybooks. So
Yes,
yes, tell us about it.
yes. So initially it was either Dubsado or Honeybook.
Mm-hmm.
However, for me, I really like to understand a software before I delegate it to a team member.
Mm-hmm.
And the learning curve with Dubsado was just too significant for me to master. So I said, okay, we can't do Dubsado. So Honeybook, it allows you to do all the things that you said, Tiffany, which I'm going to go back and really look at my proposals now. But you can um, send a link to a client, and when that client gets that link, or they can go onto your website and click login. But from there, they can retrieve that proposal, they can review it, agree to it, submit that payment. And the magical part about Honeybook is it creates a client portal for them. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
looking for a place to kind of store all your documents, store all your templates, operations, anything you're doing for them, it allows you to do that. Or you can create a, or you can integrate. See, I'm getting too deep into this. Tiffany,
I knew it.
you got me going crazy on. But what I like to use Asana so it can integrate with Asana. So now your client has its own board. But I think what's so impressive about Honeybook is the fact that there's a login. So,
Mm-hmm.
as healthcare consultants, we're oftentimes competing against the larger consulting firms. And so when you're competing against the larger consulting firms, you have to come with it. So
Mm-hmm.
process is down packed. Yes, there's a spot for you to log in. So
Mm-hmm.
I like the way it's just super streamlined.
Yeah, yeah. I'm definitely going to look into Honeybooks. Actually, they run a lot of promotions for different people. Because I'm an educator by trade, I think they wanted to give me the educator's price. I just wasn't ready for it when they sent it over to me. But now that you said it, y'all, if you don't know, Elle is thebomb.com, and I'm sure that's why you follow her. When Elle tells you to do something, you do it. So I'm going to look up Honeybooks tomorrow.
I appreciate you. It looks like
Yeah.
we have a question, Tiffany. Someone says, "What are your thoughts on Google Docs for your proposals?"
Yeah, so I think Google Docs is great for a lot of different things, including storing information. However, I don't think it's the most appropriate system when you are dealing with higher level corporate clients. You definitely want to make sure that you are presenting them with something that feels the way you want them to experience your brand and your business. And the question is, does Google Docs really get you to that point? And the all of the resources that we mentioned are pretty affordably priced, because even when you get so far with Google Docs, you're still going to have to invest in Google Docs at a certain place. You pay for storage and things like that. So it wouldn't be my first choice to answer your question. Elle, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. And you brought up a really good topic, Tiffany. You mentioned experience. And
Mhm.
so there's a way in which you want to represent your brand. And you really have to think about that client's experience with you from the moment they find your brand, wherever you initially meet them. It could be at a conference, maybe it's on LinkedIn. And like, what does that journey look like? And I feel like your proposal is a huge part of the journey. Like, it's an introduction to working with you,
Yeah.
your professionalism, your efficiency. And so Google Docs, no, I utilize Google Docs to store my own business documents. I have files, but I wouldn't use it for a proposal. So I agree with you in that aspect, Tiffany.
Yeah. Now, if you just want to outline your proposal inside of Google Docs. That's one thing because that's for your eyes only. But once you get ready to send it out to potential clients and partners, that's definitely not the best route to go.
Yeah, I think we got some Honeybook fans.
Yeah. Okay, good,
I'll be
good.
looking into Honeybooks. I know Brenda mentioned that she was introduced to Honeybook, and someone else is saying, yes, it's about your brand. It is about your brand, and it's about the client journey. So, Tiffany, I appreciate everything that you've shared with us today.
Oh,
We're going
yes.
to be taking some questions. We're taking about 2 to 3 questions. So, if you have a question for Tiffany about proposal writing for your corporate healthcare clients or prospective clients, please drop your questions. And Tiffany, I know that you have an upcoming event. Listen, Tiffany Washington is the queen of pitching and proposals. So, Tiffany, I want to learn a little bit more about your upcoming event.
Yeah, absolutely. So the event is called 3P Live, also known as Pitches, Proposals, and Partnerships Live. And it's where you come to learn how to pitch like a pro and land more contracts. So over the course of 3 days, I am going to be spending hours of time with you, walking you through each and every step of how you acquire a client, how you touch base with the client, how you build your base, how you start to ask questions during those critical moments inside of your discovery call, all the way through to actually landing the deal with that proposal, and what your life should look like thereafter as you are building out your consultancy. And so, if you've seen me glance down a couple of times, it's because I've created a serious workbook for you guys that we will go through over the course of 3 days. And it's a curriculum, if you will. It's a curriculum that helps you to learn exactly what steps you should be taking in order to take your consultancy to the next level. So, one of the things that I'm most proud about is that Elle has signed on to be a guest speaker there. So, she will be in attendance and she will be talking about the client acquisition process in detail. So, I'm excited to share the stage with her. This will be a virtual event. So the beautiful part about it is that you don't have to fly anywhere. It's all from home and it'll be from a professional production studio with professional equipment. So it's not something where you're sitting watching me sitting in my office, if you will. So we'll be in an actual studio. This will be a heightened experience. You'll also receive some goodies in the mail prior to the experience getting started. So if
Mm,
you want more information on that, I'd love for you to join us. It's June 10th through the 12th, and that is a Thursday, I'm sorry, a Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday. And yes, you will need to take off on Friday if you have a 9 to 5 because the first day is very critical. So now gives you enough time to plan. And you can go to pitchesproposalspartnerships.com in order to get your ticket. And tickets right now are a minimal price for all of the value that you're getting. So I would encourage you to go ahead and grab yours today.
yeah, that's going to be an amazing event. Tiffany, if you don't mind, do you mind typing that in the chat?
Sure. I'm
And
going to
then
drop it in the chat.
yeah, perfect,
Hmm.
perfect. And that way I can showcase it also um, in the banner. So there were some questions that came in. And as I mentioned, Tiffany is a pro when it comes to pitching and proposals. So if you have questions while we have her here, definitely utilize her mentorship. Uh,
Yeah, please
and
do.
someone mentioned, yeah, you can't ask for a 50K contract in Google Docs. No, your
Yeah.
brand is everything.
Yeah.
You definitely don't want to do that. Someone asked you, Tiffany, do you have experience with government contracts?
Okay, yep, that's a great question. Elle, before I answer that question, I sent you the link privately because the chat bubble won't come up when
Oh,
I put it on comments. So see if you got it there.
okay.
Pitches, proposals, partnerships.com. So S on each on the end of each of those.
So
So, to answer your question, have I ever done government contracting? Government contracting is a whole entity in and of itself. So, government contracting requires a few more steps from you as far as your level of preparedness is concerned. You can't just go to government entities and pitch the way that I'm teaching. There are steps that you have to take to be in compliance with them. You have to have a SAMS number and all of the things, right? So that's not necessarily what we'll be talking about at my particular event, but to answer your question, no, I've not engaged in any government contracting outside of working with the city of Houston, but the process was a little bit different for that for the Department of Education.
Tiffany, tell me again. It's pitches, proposals, and
No and in it. It's just pitches, proposals, partnerships.com.
ooh, I can't wait to learn more about the partnership aspect, especially when it comes to the sponsorships you mentioned. Ooh, that's
Oh yeah, that's gonna be good.
yes, yes. And we have another comment. Hey, Katie. Katie has a really good question. Good evening, rock stars. We'll take that compliment. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Katie.
Curious, your thoughts on how many rounds of modifications to the contract you allow regarding the client who keeps wanting to change deliverables? Such a good
Ooh,
question.
yeah, that is good. So I'll start. I want you to chime in too, but there's a such thing called scope creep, and that's what this is. When people start to ask you to do more, just a little bit more, can you add this on? But they don't expect the price to change. That is called scope creep. And one of the ways that you avoid it is through that discovery call. And then maybe after the proposal, hopping on an additional phone call or Zoom call to go through what the deliverables will be. And I would also have a clause within my paperwork that states that anything that's above and beyond or outside of the scope of what this current contract is going to be an additional price. You have the right to ask for it, whatever it is that you want. I'm either going to say yes or I am going to say no, we're not going to be able to fulfill that need. And I think one of the bigger issues is that sometimes we as business owners are scared to say no because we're scared we're going to lose out on the contract. But I think that companies and corporations appreciate the fact that you put some boundaries in, right? They want to know that they can't walk all over you. And you also want to make sure that you are putting your foot down on what you can and can't do, because what will end up happening is you will burn yourself out and end up not doing your job in excellence like you anticipated.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. What's your take, Elle?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And you mentioned something in regards to expectations. I also have expectations inside of my proposal, Tiffany.
Mm-hmm.
And expectations, can be easily translated into the time in which a client can reach out to me when I'm not available. Those things are important because I've been in situations where I've been placed on a retainer, and because I'm on that retainer, a client may feel like they can reach out to me anytime. And that could be Sunday
Mm.
at 8 o'clock with my family. So I feel like even those things in the contract are important, but also even in your elements, you mentioned listing out options. So here are the different ways in which you can work with me. One, option two, option three. And then, that should give the client some range. And then that's another really great reason and why you have to have a conversation before writing the proposal. I
Mm-hmm.
never go into just writing a proposal and assuming your needs. I need you to tell me the priority. And so, with those things in collaboration, Katie, I think you got this.
Yeah, you absolutely have this.
Absolutely. And we're going to take one more question, and then we're going to share with you, how you can contact Tiffany and stay connected with her. She's an amazing person to know. So you definitely want to make sure you have her in your network and to experts that you reach out to. And thank you, Candy. I have expectations in my contract as well. I think that's so important. That's one of the ways you can avoid scope creep. Like, let them know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Brenda asked, I have this in my contract. Do I need it in the proposal?
I think she's referring to the expectations.
Okay.
I don't think that you need to add it to your proposal. It may be a byline, like a term, like a small terms and conditions at the bottom of it. But yeah, your contract is where you definitely say anything that you want to add to this contract it will be something totally separate and apart from this price that you're agreeing to here. So I would say, and this has happened to me before, guys, where I've had to reconfigure a quote, if you will, multiple times. So I may have quoted $50,000, but they're like, that's a bit outside of our budget, but we want to try to make it work. Can you take this away? But can you add this? And you want to do that to a certain degree. You want to be a bit accommodating, but you'll know when enough is enough. And it's like, okay, so this is where we are. And if you want anything as we continue to move through this experience together, we can talk about an add on as an additional portion of this contract. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Hmm.
And Katie says thank you. I
Absolutely, Katie.
Yes, and I want to thank you, Tiffany. Um, wow, we spent a lot of time together tonight, just sharing so much about
Yeah.
proposal writing. I found it valuable myself as an experienced healthcare consultant, and I know that the others in the audience did as well. Tiffany, if we want to stay connected with you, please share. How can we stay connected with you and learn more about writing these amazing proposals?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, again, come to the event. I think Elle has dropped it. Elle has dropped it in the chat there. But I also want you to follow me on Instagram. I do hang out on the gram. So you can follow me at transformation and the number 7.com and all that's together. You can look me up on my website, tiffanyawashington.com, if you want a little bit more information. And I also have some free resources. I have a free resource called Let's Get Booked. So if that's something that you're interested in, I will shoot you the link if you send me a DM on or personal message on LinkedIn or on Instagram. So either one of those, I'll send you the link to my free resource, Let's Get Booked. It's a free mini course on how you can get booked for your consultancy.
Mhm. I appreciate you and thank you so much for coming on the Network Podcast. And everyone, please connect with Tiffany. And for those of you interested in starting your healthcare consulting business, now is the time. Healthcare needs us to show up. So I hope you show up and utilize all of your experience, monetize that, get paid for that. The options are completely limitless. I hope you join me for next week's podcast. I can't wait to see you then. Y'all have a
Absolutely.
prosperous day. Take care.